Hey there, HorseCenter fans. It's Matt and I back with another exciting edition of the show. This time, Matt, we're taking it to the turf.
We sure are. The Woodbine Mile, winning you're in for the Breeders' Cup Mile. Your favorite turf horse. Got Stormy is in there, Brian, and 2-year-old racing at Churchill Downs this weekend.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the Breeders' Cup Mile coming up soon in 7 weeks. Big 2-year-old Stennis's moment. How good is he? We'll find out more in their Iroquois. We got the Pocahontas for the fillies. And Matt, we can also talk a little bit about the controversy brewing with the Justify news. Watch it all right here now on HorseCenter. Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the extra special pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Schiffman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm good, Brian. Extra special because it's the Woodbine Mile and Churchill Downs is opening.
That's right, Matt. We have another nice Saturday here in thoroughbred racing. Let's go north of the border. As you mentioned, it's the $1 million 1 mile Woodbine Mile, Matt. And this has become one of the major prep races. Big race in its own right, but a major prep race for the Breeders' Cup Mile. It's also held on one of the best turf courses in North America up there at Woodbine. Matt, and folks, if you've been a watcher, a regular watcher of HorseCenter, you know that HorseCenter has been on Got Stormy for a long time. Now I didn't see this coming, Matt. She's 8-5 on the morning line against the males in the Woodbine Mile.
Yeah, well, after her last 2 performances, Brian, I think 8-5 is a very realistic price. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if she's lower than that. But those 2 races have been absolutely dynamic. She crushed the boys in the 5-star day at Saratoga. What's not to like and what's not to prevent people from putting their money on her.
Yeah, and we're talking about, Mark Cassidy mentioned to me after the first one, the Della Rose, that, hey, maybe we've got another developing pep in here. The 4-star Dave, she set a course record. Now, those races at Saratoga were very firm. The course record, obviously, and the Della Rose were both very firm turf courses. They are supposed to get a little rain at Woodbine. It's a different kind of turf course a little bit than Saratoga. So I think she will have to do it on probably a firm turf, but maybe a good turf. But either way, not as firm, not the same type of turf course at Saratoga. So yeah, if she runs back to those races at Saratoga, and as a Got Stormy fan for a long time now, I certainly hope she does. But if she runs back to those races, I think she's awfully tough to beat. The second choice on the morning line is Raging Bull, who was one of the ones got up for second in the 4-star day behind her. But if she doesn't like the turf course just a little bit less than Saratoga because of different type of turf course, maybe she's beatable in here. And certainly there's reason to think she is beatable against the males again. As I mentioned, Raging Bull, 3-1 on the morning line, is the second choice. And Raging Bull, I think, is interesting, Matt. Chad Brown on the turf, of course. You always got to watch that. He is 0-4 in 2019, but he's run good races every time. And I think there is a little interest here in that he was coming out of longer races. He was coming out losing races against bricks and mortar, but he was coming out of long races. And then he got into the 4-star David a mile on a really firm turf course at Saratoga and was way back. Came running at the end, was never close to Got Stormy, came running to get second. Maybe with that race under his belt at a mile, he'll be a little sharper here for the Woodbine Mile and not fall back so far.
Yeah, and also the Woodbine turf course has a very, very long stretch run, and I guess that could be helpful. A little more ground for a big closer like Raging Bull to kick in down there. And I think the difference, like you were mentioning with the turf course, is that firm turf course at Saratoga is firm and it's really dry, also making it so fast. And like you said, there may be a firm turf course at Woodbine, but it's not going to be firm and really dry and hard like that was at Saratoga.
Exactly. So a little different turf course. maybe and maybe the fact that Raging Bull's not coming out of a longer race gives him a little bit better shot. He's won Grady Stakes out in California impressively, so Raging Bull certainly a horse to watch out for in this race, and as well going forward to the Breeders' Cup Mile. The third horse on the list, Matt, is just a really nice professional turf horse. His name is Synchrony. 6-1 on the morning line seems awfully square on such a nice professional turf horse, cutting back to a mile as well.
Yeah, Michael Stidham, and his prep race for the Woodbine Mile was at that course in Toronto, where he got a win in the King Edward Grade 2 up there. So we know he likes the course, and as you said, very professional veteran turf horse.
Yeah, and Stidham has stated recently, well, maybe a mile is his best distance after all. It's hard to tell on the past performances. He's got a whole lot of races, a little bit longer than a mile. He's also a horse, Matt, who's good as gold in Grade 2, Grade 3 competition. We don't know if he can beat the very best, but maybe this is a real shot. And if that 6-1 morning line is in fact close to reality, Synchrony becomes a very interesting horse. Like Raging Bull, he'll have to catch the filly. He'll be behind her early, no doubt, but a win over the track, as you mentioned, over the course, that's a positive for Synchrony. Speaking of wins over the course, Silent Poet, 15-1 on the morning line, a little higher than I thought he would be, but he's kind of the hot horse up there, winning races at a little bit shorter distance coming in.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, and looks like on paper this could be the lone speed in here, although certainly Got Stormy likes to be forwardly placed in here and certainly won't let this one get too far ahead. Has a terrific record up there, Brian. 11 starts, 6 wins, 3 seconds, 1/3. And as you said, won a Grade 2 prepping for this. It was 7 furlongs, but Silent Poet has won going a mile also. So an interesting horse in here in terms of the pace dynamics and the morning line odds.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Matt. Although I don't agree that it looks like lone speed to me. I think the filly coming from Europe out of the Beverly D ran awfully fast, and she's got a lot of speed on her form. If you look, Awesome Tank, I'm talking about. She's 8-1 on the morning line, by the way. Another female in the field. I would suspect that she would be out there. And then I'm going to throw out a real long shot. American Guru is 30-1 on the morning line, Matt. He's got some speed as well. And if you look, he was a really up-and-coming, talented turf horse, it looked like, last year. He's only had 2 races back. First one wasn't bad, and the second one was a win at Woodbine. So if you're looking for a bomb to throw in the Woodbine Mile, I would take a look at American Guru. Again, 30-1 on the morning line. Who else, Matt? Luke Cullen. Luke Cullen is only 8-1 on the morning line, and he's coming off a few wins in New York.
Yeah, looks like a horse that's coming around. 2 for 2 this year. 2 nice wins up at Saratoga, including the Lure most recently, which is a restricted stake. So I mean, it's going to require another step up in class for Luke Cullen, but he's in really good form. I also want to mention, when we were talking about Got Stormy and the Woodbine course, Got Stormy does have a win at Woodbine. That was last year. So, she has run well up there already.
That's true. And it's just that I think the last 2 races were so superlative and better than she's done ever before that you wonder if this will be a turf course as much to her liking as Saratoga. Obviously, this summer. Made You Look is in the Chad Brown barn, Matt. He's another horse like a few in here who had a layoff, and he's come back with some decent races. To me, it boils down to, I'm admittedly a horse who's been betting Got Stormy many races over the past year or so, and I'm rooting for her to win. To me, if she runs her race, I think she's the one to beat. Raging Bull and Synchrony look like the most likely horses underneath. They'll have to rally. American Guru is my underneath bomb. How about you, sir?
Yeah, I think Got Stormy certainly is the horse to beat in here. And if she runs the way she did at Saratoga, she's going to be really hard to beat. But like I said, I don't see her odds being higher than that 8-5 morning line, possibly lower. So I'm going to take a shot with the veteran, with Synchrony, and off of his performance at Woodbine last time.
Yeah, nice win over the turf course last time for Synchrony. Can he beat the top of the line? We'll see. Got Stormy did it last time. Maybe Synchrony can step up this time. But like we said, a really nice turf course over the years. Matt, is this a group? Is this a group, whether it be Got Stormy or Synchrony or maybe Raging Bull, that can step up and take the Woodbine Mile and then go out to Santa Anita and win the Breeders' Cup Mile in 7 weeks?
I don't know, Brian, but one of them's going to get a win in your in spot into the Breeders' Cup Mile, and you know, the Breeders' Cup Mile, more than any other race historically in the Breeders' Cup, has been one where the Europeans send lots of horses over, and the mile over there in Europe is such a coveted distance. It's hard to know where this bunch is going to fit in against Europe's best milers.
Absolutely. Got Stormy, for what it's worth, Matt, I think she will like a mile out in California, Santa Anita. I think that would be her game. So watch out for Got Stormy. She already has a win in urine, of course, from the course record performance in the 4-star Dave. So she would just be a second one at that, but the others don't. But I think several of these with a good performance on Saturday would make the trip out to Santa Anita. And I think right now, Matt, you mentioned the Europeans. We could talk a little bit about them for the Breeders' Cup Mile. It's not a heralded bunch over in Europe, and like you said, there will be several that come over, but right now it's kind of a hodgepodge. I think certainly the horse that would be favored of the Europeans right now would be Circus Maximus, who's got a couple of Group 1 wins in both England and France.
Yeah, it's Aidan O'Brien, and we certainly know that Aidan O'Brien aims for the Breeders' Cup. His best running of horses over here in America happens in the Breeders' Cup. So yeah, Circus Maximus, 4 wins, 10 starts in a career that, like as you said, has a win at Longchamp and has a win at Ascot also.
Yeah, and speaking of Ascot, of course, Lord Glitter's a veteran and a horse who's come over before. Had a nice win at Ascot as well. So he's a horse we're looking for as a possible horse to come over. Lawrence might come over. King of Comedy, One Master. It's a solid bunch, and a bunch that could repeat. Europe won the Breeders' Cup Mile last year, but probably not a group that strikes fear in the top Americans. We're just not sure. You know, the Woodbine Mile could produce a favorite for the Breeders' Cup Mile, but there's a list of horses, American horses right now, that we're not sure if they're in the Breeders' Cup Mile pointing for that race or not. Bricks and Mortar being the headliner if they decide to go this way, but it's questionable right now.
Yeah, especially with Bricks and Mortar, he is a little bit of a tweener in here in terms of distance. Mile is not what he typically runs. 1.5 miles, not typically what he runs. 1 1/8, 1 1/4. Right in the wheelhouse of Bricks and Mortar. But we're talking about Bricks and Mortar here, Brian. Should we really be concerned about distance with this horse that has been so spectacular in our country? I'd say no if he was running against only Americans.
Yeah, we should find out more soon, because it'll be interesting to see where he goes next. If it is the Keeneland for the Grade 1 Shadwell Mile, I think that's a good tip-off that Chad Brown is thinking the Breeders' Cup Mile rather than the 12-furlong Breeders' Cup Turf. And don't forget Annals of Time, who Chad Brown has similarly brought back after a long layoff. Looks like a true 1.5 mile horse. So maybe Bricks and Mortar is more likely to go to the mile. And I agree with you, Matt. He's the horse to beat in the mile. But on the other hand, I think his best distance is 1.25 miles. He reminds me a little bit of a real turf tiger that I liked years and years ago named Paradise Creek, who was also a tweener. Paradise Creek was good at middle distances, and he got really good at a mile and a quarter as he got older. They did try him in the 12 furlong Breeders' Cup Turf. He ran his race. He just was a little short late and got beat in the 12 furlong Breeders' Cup Turf. So real interesting to see where Bricks and Mortar ends up, whether it's 12 or 8. He'd kind of prefer a 10 furlong Breeders' Cup race. Catholic Boy, Matt. What about Catholic Boy? I really don't know what's going on with him lately. He's a nice horse, and a horse I could see winning the Breeders' Cup Mile, but who knows where he's going right now.
Yeah, I agree with that, Brian. He's kind of been a head scratcher this year. He's only run twice, is that right? And seems to be aiming for the Kelso at Belmont Park, which is coming up a grade 2 on the dirt. So I'm not sure what's going on with him. The lack of racing and all those kinds of things has me feeling like if he goes into the turf against some of the names that we've mentioned, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I think he's that classy a horse, and if we come back, I'm not scared off by 4 races in a year anymore. I wish top horses ran 8, 9, 10 times a year, but hey, if Catholic Boy comes back with a nice prep and they say Breeders' Cup Mile, I'm going to listen. Another interesting candidate for the Breeders' Cup Mile would be Rushing Fall, another filly. Rushing Fall has done very, very little wrong in her career, including this year. Sister Charlie beat her in the Diana last time, but Rushing Fall at a mile out in California where she's already won, Rushing Fall sounds like a very interesting addition to the Breeders' Cup Mile if they choose to go that route with the filly.
Yeah, 8 wins and 10 starts, and a loss to Sister Charlie is no embarrassment because that's what people do. They lose to Sister Charlie.
Yeah, and Rushing Fall was better than Got Stormy earlier this year. I thought that was pretty clear at Keeneland. So Rushing Fall would be an interesting mile. What about the undefeated 3-year-old, Matt? He's only had 3 races, but Valid Point, another Chad Brown turf horse. Valid Point, how good might he be? And I think the Breeders' Cup Mile makes sense for him as well.
Yeah, how good? I don't know. After that win in the Grade 1 Secretariat, you're exactly right, Brian. How good could this horse get to be?
That's right. Out in California, I'm not excited about the bunch. I think Bowie's Hero is a hard-hitting rallier who might be the best of the California middle distance turf horses. Last time he had some trouble when he was beaten in the Del Mar Mile. Prince Earl got the win that day. Bolo's already had a win in Uran. Bowie's Hero, I could see rallying up for a spot in the Breeders' Cup Mile, but the horses that we mentioned that are only possibilities right now for the Breeders' Cup Mile, they seem much more potent as potential winners of the Breeders' Cup Mile than me.
Yeah, I agree with that, Brian.
All right, folks, so we got the Woodbine Mile on Saturday, a big race up in Canada, one of their biggest races of the year. Can the filly do it? Got Stormy. I say yes. Matt's going to take a shot to beat her. And then the Breeders' Cup Mile, a lot of interesting possibilities for the race 7 weeks after the Woodbine Mile. The Woodbine Mile will say a lot about the Breeders' Cup Mile, but so will the decisions of horses like Rushing Fall, Bricks and Mortar, Catholic Boy, Valid Point, and of course, which Europeans come over. So Matt and I will be talking more about the Breeders' Cup Mile and the Breeders' Cup, of course, as a whole in coming weeks right here on HorseCenter. Right now, Matt, I want to talk Kentucky Derby, Kentucky Oaks, because we got races at Churchill Downs on Saturday. And these are interesting races, not only in their own right, not only moving forward to the Breeders' Cup, but then we're talking about the same track that will host the big races in May. Let's start in the Iroquois with the boys, Matt. We got a field of 10 going, a mile and a 16th. Most of these horses haven't been that far yet. And Dennis Moment. Once again, I'm going to be on the favorite because I think Dennis's Moment, a son of Tisnow, trained by Dale Romans, is the real deal.
Yeah, Brian, and you mentioned both of these races they're both winning you're in races for the Breeders' Cup for the juvenile and the juvenile fillies, and they both kick off the points races for the big races on the first weekend in May at Churchill Downs. Dennis's Moment. It's hard to argue with 19 and a half length victory. But no doubt that's going to bring a very, very, very short price for the Dale Romans runner. There are other horses, as is always the case with 2-year-olds at this point. There are other horses in here that also like to run on the lead. They may not be as fast as Dennis's Moment in here for sure. They're going 2 turns. They're going a mile and a 16th. Most of them for the first time. So lots of questions for all of them, including Dennis's Moment.
That's right. Dennis's Moment, as high as I am on him, and as much potential as I think he has, who knows? A lot of new things. He's coming out of a maiden special weight. He's coming out of Ellis Park. Now he's going a mile and 16th after only going 7 furlongs last time. It was a pretty amazing 7 furlongs at Ellis Park, going 121 and change. As you said, Matt, winning by just about 20 lengths. Romans is high on him. Romans has been high on horses before. Reminds me a lot of Not This Time, who was impressive, winning a maiden and then the Iroquois, and then ran a huge race out in California. Just got beat, barely got beat by Classic Empire, a classic winner and a champion in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I think he's the real deal, but hey, let's take a shot at some odds in here too, Matt. And I do have a bit of a long shot, or at least I think he'll be a long shot, with Dennis's Moment getting a lot of money, and then other horses certainly to bet. The long shot I want to talk about a little bit, Matt, is Let Me Know. That's one word. Twirling Candy, a son of Twirling Candy in the Ian Wilkes barn. He's run 2 good races where he came from way back to win a maiden race, and then he was second in the Ellis Park Juvenile. I think he had excuses in both of those races. I think he had trouble in both of those races, and I think he's a horse who can get a mile and 16th. If Let Me Know is the 5th choice in here or so at double digits, I want to put a few dollars on him. Let Me Know to be, hey, if Dennis's Moment is as good as I think he may be, to be second, or who knows, maybe he wins the thing.
Yeah, fair enough, Brian. With some good stakes experience in here and the appearance that that more distance is going to be good, I'm going to take a shot with Scabbard, who is not going to be as odds generous as Let Me Know, but Scabbard is from the barn of Eddie Keneally. Broke his maiden at Churchill Downs, so we know he likes the track. Then was up in Saratoga and ran a good second behind Green Light Go, who a lot of people think is the best 2-year-old in training. Certainly is the best 2-year-old in training in New York right now. Another one that made a big closing move also. So I'm going to take a shot with Scabbard, although maybe this one's going to be second choice or third choice in here.
Yeah, I would expect Scabbard second choice on my list, Matt, but yeah, not a lot wrong there in his first 2 races. The Churchill Downs maiden debut win was very nice, and then the Son of More Than Ready really didn't give Green Light Go all that much in the Saratoga Special for second, but he was clearly second. This horse was formerly named Noose. They changed the name to Scabbard, and probably the second choice, but a horse who looks like a nice horse. And by the way, last time Green Light Go, this time Dennis's Moment. Those are currently my top 2 rated juvenile colts. So Scabbard is not finding easy competition in here. Another one we need to mention is the horse that beat my long shot, Let Me Know, in the Ellis Park Juvenile. That's Rowdy Yates, and Rowdy Yates is a son of Morning Line who has some experience, has some stakes experience. And as I mentioned, he won the Ellis Park Juvenile last time. Yeah,
again, another one that broke his maiden at Churchill Downs and has been racing in Kentucky, was second in the Bashford Manor, and then won the Ellis Park Juvenile. So with a bunch like that, he's a very experienced horse.
Yeah, he's got some speed in here, which I don't know that will help him at a mile and 16th with some others in here, like Juggernaut, a son of Golden Sense, who aired in his debut at Ellis Park. Looks like he's got a lot of speed. But Rowdy Yates, third choice on my line, another horse who is a classy 2-year-old. Speaking of horses who could be any kind, Flute Maker won for fun in the slop, but maybe even more interesting than him is Lebda, who is 2 for 2 coming from the Mid-Atlantic. Last time, Delaware Park, Matt, he won by 11 lengths, the son of Raisin d'Etat. who knows how good he is, but it's a big step up in class.
Yeah, broke his maiden at Laurel. Another one that has shown a preference for racing close to the pace in here. Seems like a step up in class from Delaware Park and Laurel to this kind of field.
Absolutely. I should mention the sire New Year's Day again, another young sire Maximum Security. He's got 2 in here, and they both are coming off nice wins, January 1 and Auto Mode. So New Year's Day, a young sire to watch. I don't particularly love the chances of either of his 2 in here, but definitely a sire's doing well. Matt, for this, I'm excited to see the Iroquois because I think Dennis's moment could be the best 2-year-old in the country, so I want to see what he does stretching out at Churchill Downs in his 1 stakes prep for the Breeders' Cup. But I'm also a little excited to bet my long shot. Let me know. I think he'll be double digits, as I said, and I think he is sitting on an improved race.
Yeah, and like we said, I see it. Even though there's going to be a big favorite like Dennis's moment, this is a kind of race where just about anything can happen.
There you go. And Matt's on Scabbard a little bit, the Saratoga Special second place finisher. All right, Matt, let's go to the fillies. The Kentucky Oaks possibilities, but of course the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies winning your in race. This is also a mile 16th. They drew a field of 9 for the Saturday race at Churchill Downs. And Brad Cox looks to have a strong duo in Portrait and British Idiom. Both are coming off impressive maiden wins.
Yeah, that's for sure, Brian. Portrait won his debut by 12 lengths. Won his second start by 12 lengths at Ellis Park. So an impressive performance there. But out of the 2, I prefer British Idiom, who is a daughter of Flashback, who Cox opted with this one to race at Saratoga, and she was bet down to be the favorite in that race and was a 3.5 length debut winner at the Spa. And for me, that says something because Cox will often, sometimes he'll start his really good horses at Indiana Grand, Ellis Park, but this one he saved for Saratoga. So I like British Idiom. British Idiom is going to be my pick also.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Brad Cox certainly had his most success at Saratoga yet this year, and she was part of that. I actually prefer Portrait a little bit. She had started on turf, and it was a pretty good performance. She ran 3rd. And then the Ellis Park race was nice. This is a daughter of Tapizar, and I think Portrait might be the slightly more advanced, slightly more likely to get a mile 16th right away. But Brad Cox in with a strong duo either way. We got to mention the Doug O'Neill shipper because Lazy Daisy has run nothing but good races out in California. She wasn't as good as Bass last time in the Del Mar Debutante, but if you look, she wasn't far from second in that race. She was actually 4th, but I think O'Neill brings in a pretty experienced filly who's raced good fillies. So she's got a little bit of an edge in experience and maybe as far as what she's run against before.
Yeah, and we know that Doug O'Neill never hesitates to ship around the country to race in the best races and the best competition. And, he's already had some success this year with shipping some 2-year-olds around the country and getting some wins. So certainly a dangerous horse.
Yeah, Lazy Daisy coming from California. Blood Curdling, Matt. I'm not sure about this name. By the way, Lazy Daisy is a daughter of Painter, so always good to see the Painters doing well. Blood Curdling, a daughter of Fed Biz. Colonial Downs, on the dirt at Colonial Downs, winning by 11.
Yeah, and I don't know, the name is a little off-putting for me, for sure, but trained by Dane Kabisky, daughter of Fed Biz. Big winner at Colonial Downs. And I'll tell you, in this day and age, Brian, just to digress for a second, to see a horse opening back up like Colonial Downs and have the success that they had down there is great to see. Again, like we said, with the horse from Iroquois, shipping from the Mid-Atlantic here is going to be step up, but certainly an impressive debut.
Absolutely. Although Lebda's had 2 wins in the male race and blood curdling, just that one race, Colonial Downs. So I'm not really sure what to make of the Colonial Downs form, but she won for fun. Morning Gold, daughter Morning Line, has been the distance. It's been on turf. 2 good races on turf at Saratoga. There's a few others in here. Palace Malice has a young filly who's raced well at Gulfstream Park. There's of course who aired in maiden claiming race. So a lot of opportunities. I think this race is a little bit more wide open, the Pocahontas, that is, than the Iroquois.
Yeah, Brian, should be an interesting race in there. And you know, you mentioned some of these horses starting on the turf. Nowadays, that has seemed to be more of an accepted practice, with trainers finding a spot a little kinder to the legs and the feet of 2-year-olds to get a first race in on the turf and such. So folks shouldn't dismiss that turf experience as a negative.
Yeah, in fact, in this particular case, Morning Gold would be my long shot to kind of throw in to give a chance coming off the turf. You're right, Matt. Turf is not only good as far as being just a little bit kinder to the horses' joints and such, but also it's a way to get these horses fit. Morning Gold's been the distance, Saratoga, and there's no reason to think she can't handle dirt. So Morning Gold's an interesting long shot in here for me. But top choice, if I had to pick a top choice, it would be the other Brad Cox filly, or the one that you are not picking. I'm thinking Portrait probably is the most likely winner out of this bunch. Brad Cox, daughter Tapazar, boy, that sounds familiar. She'll be my top pick in here.
Sounds good, Brian.
And you are on British Idiom?
I'm on British Idiom, yep.
All right, so we're on either side of the Cox duo. Folks, that's our show today. We had the Woodbine Mile and the Breeders' Cup Mile, the Iroquois and the Pocahontas. But before we go, Matt, there was some big breaking news yesterday. I think we both read the article by Joe Drape for the New York Times talking about Justify, how he reportedly tested positive for a banned substance, performance-enhancing substance. Of course, he was trained by Bob Baffert. Of course, he was an undefeated Triple Crown winner. This is big news in racing. It seems like, according to the article, California Racing Board swept it under the table to some extent. And we're waiting to hear more news, Matt. You have any thoughts on what we know so far?
Again, Brian, we're both here talking about an article that we read. So Bob Baffert has supposedly said that he's going to make a statement today about the situation, but it seems like, reporting what the article says, that the California Board of Racing seem to create their own excuse for Mr. Baffert about how that banned substance got into the blood of the horse. They came up with their own excuse of contamination of feed, and I don't know. To me, that doesn't seem like that is the job of those groups typically. Again, according to the article by Joe Drape.
Yeah, folks, we don't know all the facts. It seems on the surface, the article, of course, is one-sided, breaking this news, but it seems on the surface that the CHRB has some serious questions to answer. Maybe they were apologetic to a horse who had already won the Kentucky Derby after they dragged their feet after testing positive after the Santa Anita Derby win. It's not a good look for racing. It's not a good look for a horse that will likely go down into the Hall of Fame. And it's not a good look for Mr. Bob Baffert, the most noteworthy trainer we have going right now in American racing. So Matt and I are with you in wanting to know more facts and find out more about this developing story. All right, on that note, Matt, let's get a parting shot from you, my friend.
All right, Brian, as you said, a great racing once again on the turf at Woodbine. The 2-year-olds taking the stage, and I've always enjoyed 2-year-old racing, so it's great to see that happening. Brian, are you going out to Churchill Downs this weekend?
That's the plan. I want to see some of these horses running that. Turf racing 2-year-olds, I'm with you. What's better than that? Hey, folks, I'll tell you one thing that's better. You tuning in every week to HorseCenter, because we love racing just like you, and we love having you here join us on HorseCenter every week. Thanks to our great producer, Brett Workman, for putting together the show. If you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel here on Horse Racing Nation, please do so now. Also, I want to thank our sponsor, Derby Wars, the best contest site out there. Matt, you know what we're talking about next week. We're going to talk a little bit more Breeders' Cup, but of course, next week is a big weekend down your way, down in Pennsylvania. Parks has, of course, big races, the Pennsylvania Derby and the Cotillion. So we're going to talk about that next week, right?
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to that big weekend at Parks.
Absolutely. Me too. We'll see you then right here on HorseCenter.